Good morning to everybody. How you doing? Hope all's well. Keep up the beautiful work. Bezrat Hashem yitbarach v'yitromam. We should have besorot tovot, yeshua v'nehamot for the hostages, Hajjabah, really Hajjabah, and the soldiers. We need Mashiach. I think that's the only thing that will help. We're trying, and as we're trying to get some sanity, all of a sudden the Houthis do their things. Shema Israel. I think only the Melech HaMashiach could fix the day, and he'll come when we have unity and we have love for one another, like everybody listening to this class has. But spread the word that everyone should be like you. Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach. We are learning the laws of the holiday of Yom Tov. And the other night in the class, we discussed, are you allowed to extinguish a fire on Yom Tov? Now, Hashem should protect us all. That's not what kind of fire we mean. We mean a stove, we mean a barbecue, we mean a fire pit or a fireplace or a lighter, which we also spoke about the other day. You're allowed, Rabino Grande Hamadia tells us that, of course, you're not allowed to extinguish, but you're allowed to do something called gram kibui, cause and effect extinguishing. Now, it doesn't really only work, but in Israel, they have, I think in America it's too complicated, but in Israel, they need these inventions. God bless Am Yisrael, wherever they might be, but because they don't have a goy as accessible as we have here. You know, one time we don't discriminate with any colors or anything, but it could be someone of a different color was walking by 1 in the morning, and an old Jewish couple, they're outside, their AC is not on, and they're boiling hot at 1 in the morning. They can't sleep. So they see a fellow, a young fellow, maybe a gold tooth or two, and they ask him, could you come in and open the AC? He says, you must really love your God and have trust in him, because to bring me into the house, not everybody would really bring him. So they said, yeah, we're not allowed to touch electricity. We're not allowed to do this. So if you could open the AC, he said, no problem. He comes in, opens the AC. Then he starts walking out with the TV and the remote. And they said, what are you doing? He said, you're not going to need this till after the weekend anyway. And by the time that happens, anyway, short story long, in Israel, they have something called a Shabbat Goy in a car that goes around. He has a banner on top of his car that says Shabbat Goy, and he goes from town to town. He's in the town, and when needed, he goes from house to house. There was a story in Never Never Land where they had a Shabbat Goy for 20 years, and he's opening lights on Shabbat and closing lights on Shabbat, and he's opening stoves and closing stoves, and he's doing all of the above in a permissible manner to tell a goy. And then he passed away, and in that town they said, okay, yalla, they'll bury him in Potter's Field or something of the like. And all of a sudden the family comes out of the woodwork and says, Baba, he's Jewish, just like you guys. Uli Shema Yisrael. There was a Jewish goy shel Shabbat. I don't even know if it was a Never Never Land. I think maybe it was on planet Pluto. Elon Musk was in charge of that town. But anyway, true story, unfortunately. So somebody who always looks at the cup half full, you do have those people out there that they always look at a situation positive, and we should look at a situation always positive as well. And he said, now don't get any ideas. Don't tell this to anyone from planet Pluto or Wisconsin or Never Never Land. But somebody who looks at it positive, they say, look what a holy Jew. He's willing to take the hit for the team just so everybody could enjoy their Shabbat. But no one's ever allowed to be Mehalel Shabbat for others to be Mehalel Shabbat. Also on planet Mars, there are people that when someone drives on Shabbat, they might throw stones at the cars, cracking windows and all of the above. And that's not allowed on Shabbat either. So they're desecrating Shabbat for someone to keep Shabbat. So they said, yes, it's worth it to desecrate Shabbat to get someone to keep Shabbat, and that is this not correct. That is wrong. And of course, we have to do things with love and being calm and showing them how much we care about them. You know, in Israel before October 7th, there were maybe certain soccer teams that played on Shabbat. And they asked Hamavadia, could we come for a beracha? You would think that if they play on Shabbat, then a rabbi would say, Baba, you were Mahalel Shabbat, you want to come for a beracha? But Hamavadia said, Ahlan wa sahlan. And he brought them and he smacked them in the faces. He did ask them, why are you losing so many games? But he also told them hello, showing them the love, because that's the way we do it. As a matter of fact, that will be in the parasha this coming Friday. We hope to be in Yerushalayim by then. Habnuya, Bezrat Hashem. But anyway, that's the way to do things. So we can never desecrate so someone else can do it. So in Israel, like we said, they don't have any as much access as we do over here. So they have these inventions, and leave it to the Jewish brain to have an invention. Just like they have a timer on a hot plate for Shabbat, which we over here have as well. God should keep us all safe. They have a timer on the gas of the oven. We could use a couple of timers for people who are a little too gassy. How you doing? To shut them off. But all kidding aside, they have a timer and it has the thingamajigs, and they set it to turn it off, which is 100% allowed on the holiday, especially. But even it's allowed on Shabbat. But to use a stove on Shabbat is a whole nother story. So if someone doesn't have one of those timers in America, like we said, it's much harder to do. In Israel, they may have smaller ovens and they move easier, and they have this timer behind it, and they set it before the holiday. And Shalom Yisrael. Hamavadia does bring down that you could take a pot, fill it up with water, and then let it boil, and then it overflows, puts out the fire, and then once the gas is flowing, of course, you turn it off. Number one, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Number two, of course, you have to for sakana purposes, but the pot with water doesn't always work. You have to be a little more skilled. So the easiest thing to do to turn off a stove on the holiday is if there's a goy around, you ask them, the neighbor's goy, this one's goy, etc., to turn it off on the holiday. That's no problem, according to anyone and everyone. As mentioned, Rav Moshe Feinstein has a heter to turn off gas on the holiday, never Shabbat. So ask your local rabbi about that as well. We also know when it comes to cooking on the holiday, we mentioned that you're not allowed to do things in huge amounts on the holiday, because the rabbis came along and said if a person's going to sit there harvesting his entire field on the holiday, then the holiday's over, you make Havdalah, and he didn't do what he was supposed to on the holiday. So things that are small to do, that aren't going to take up a whole day, then of course you're allowed to do them. Now we know the Torah tells us whatever you need for cooking on the holiday, you're allowed to do. The Torah also says for physical benefit, you're also allowed to do. Now, of course, there's there's boundaries that we have to follow and guidelines, because if it was just we're allowed to cook anything, so people would do who knows. Now, believe it or not, in the old days they were even allowed to slaughter on the holiday. Now, halachically, today you're allowed to as well, but very, very few places and people do that. Thank you, Hashem, we have refrigerators. Thank you, Hashem, they have butchers that have fresh meat, and we keep it in the refrigerator or even the freezer, so you don't have to do any shahita on the holiday. But there's a whole subject with regarding shahita. Number one, you have to designate the animal or the bird. Today they allow fowl, they allow bird, but you're not. They don't allow bigger animals today because it's too complicated, the slaughtering and then this and then that, and therefore, but there are people today, I've heard of people that they like to get a rabbi to their house for the holiday and they get a fresh duck, and that's despicable. How you doing? And they get a fresh duck and they eat it. The rabbi slaughters it and then they salt it, and you have to follow the halachot. Hamavadia does speak with many things that sometimes people make a mistake, and one of the things that the rabbi makes a lot of awareness about, that so shouldn't people shouldn't make a mistake. God should protect everyone. I don't know what's going to be in Miron this year, but in the old days, 1 million Jews would go to Miron on Lag BaOmer. Imagine for the Hilulah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, 1 million people at least. And people used to go there and slaughter animals and make barbecues and forget about it. The place is, the whole town is pretty empty all year long now near the rabbi's kever. It's hustling and bustling 24/7, literally. However, when it comes to the other parts of the city of Miron, it's it's a little deadish until Lag BaOmer comes. And I was once in Miron 2 weeks after Lag BaOmer, and they were still cleaning up shop. Imagine 1 million people, and Jews like to eat. So you got the leftover macaroon cans from Passover rolling all over the place, and whatever else it is that they bring. So in that subject of going to Miron, Hamadia used to tell the yeshiva bacher, stay in yeshiva and learn, etc. It's a big thing to go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. However, maybe it could be women aren't as dressed as proper as they should be. They don't know better Hazaton, but the yeshiva bacher to see that. And one of the rabbi's things that he mentioned was also slaughtering animals. People, they didn't slaughter properly. They mean well. It could be they had a cousin who maybe knew how to do shahita from watching someone else, and they didn't do it in the proper way. So, of course, if someone does practice shahita, it has to be done in a magnificent way, in a perfect way. The knife has to be, as we know, perfectly smooth. They take their fingernail and they go across, and if they feel any nick that the human eye cannot see, but the thumb feels it, the thumbnail, right? Then they feel a little nick. The animal is not kosher. The knife is not kosher. They have to sit there sharpening it. And then, like we said, they have to check the lungs to make sure it's okay. They have to also salt the meat. And before salting it, they have to soak it inside water, room temperature water, for a half hour to make it porous. Then they put the salt on it, and it takes out all of the blood, which is not allowed. My grandma told me years ago, she remembers, she should rest in peace. The greatest thing they used to salt on was some of the fruit boxes. I don't even think they make it anymore, but some of the fruit boxes that they get, they used to be made out of wood, thin wood, and the top would be like woven wood with very thin sheets of wood. So they used to put the bird or whatever it was, the meat, on there, and then salt it underneath, salt it on top, because there has to be drainage for the blood to drain out. So today, Baruch Hashem, all of the butchers already salt the meat for us. They already do all of the items for us. In Israel, there are still times that believe it or not, people buy meat and they themselves have to salt it. When it comes to meat and things, they're not as they're in the high tech they're putting for other things, but the butcher houses are not really like here. God bless my wife. She once went to a butcher and he said, "Yeah, go look in the fridge. It's a walk-in fridge." And she saw a head of a cow on the floor looking at her, and that was the last time she's going into that fridge. Anyway, short story long, when it comes to the holiday, halachically, you are allowed to make shahita, but like I said, animals we don't, bird we do. but only with a professional rabbi. So you're allowed to cook on the holiday. According to the Torah, you're allowed to open the fire, but the Chachamim came along and said no opening a fire from scratch. Only what they call me'esh la'esh is what we do today. So the rabbi tells us another halacha that if there's something you could cook before the holiday where it's going to taste the same if you cook it on the holiday or not. For example, if you throw a nice oyster steak on the barbecue before the holiday begins, then keep it in the fridge and then heat it up, it ain't going to taste the same as if you do it on the spot. How you doing? However, there are certain things that's no difference. If a person, whatever it might be, if you could cook it before the holiday and it's going to be exactly the same, then better to do it before the holiday. And also the same thing goes for baking. If you have brownies that anyway have to cool off, then it tastes the same if you do it Erev holiday or not. Then the halacha is better to do it before. But what if a person did not do it, even something that you can bake before or cook before? So the halacha is if they did it did it, even if they did it on purpose, forgive me for saying, that you're still allowed to derive benefit, or you're still allowed to do it on the holiday itself. Today, God bless, the women are running from store to store. Takes 9 hours to go down certain blocks. There's not now it's quadruple parked on the street. Forget about double park. They don't even give tickets to double park anymore because it's not even it's not going against the law. When it's 3 and 4, that's when they start to do it. And of course, for the compost and the garbage, be careful. Hashem should watch us all. But anyway, back to our subject, because they're all busy and it might not be possible, so they are allowed to cook on the holiday, even if it was something that wouldn't lose its taste had someone cooked it before. We know you're not allowed to cook from the holiday to weekday. That's for sure. You're not allowed to even cook from holiday to Shabbat without eruv tafshilin, and you're not allowed to cook from one day of the holiday to another. But now, let's say somebody's cooking and they only have a small amount of people in the house. Our community, God bless, they're always cooking extra. Someone might pop in, faddalu, ahlan wa sahlan, etc., and they need to cook more. So if that's the reason, 100% you're allowed to. But there's another reason. Sometimes when you can't cook 3 kibbeh bowls with 3 cherries and shelemah Israel, it doesn't taste as good. But when there's a lot more in the pot, giving flavor to everything, then that enhances it. So the rabbi tells us, even if there's going to be a lot of fadlats, a lot of leftovers for after the holiday, a weekday, it's still allowed, especially for the second day Yom Tov. And also, we said, even though you can't do from one day to the other, but just like we said before, when it comes to cause and effect, the rabbi lets us do certain things, like extinguish. Another thing to do cause and effect is just like on Shabbat, as a matter of fact, for a liquid, if the hot plate is going on at 9 and you want to put a liquid on, we know something that's all liquid on Shabbat, we can't put on a hot plate, even though it's a hot plate for Shabbat. But if it's majority solid, then you're allowed to. But if majority liquid, you're not allowed to, but you are allowed to put it on the hot plate before it turns on, and then it turns on with the liquid there. Since you put it when it was off, you are good because that's cause and effect, and that's on Shabbat, but not something raw. Something raw, no way, Jose, can you do that. But a liquid, we're strict with when it comes to heating it up. If it's majority liquid, but and there are those that say it's allowed, we don't hold like them, so therefore cause and effect is allowed. But over here also, let's say someone has to prepare for the evening meal, and we know you're not supposed to cook in the in the afternoon of one day holiday for the evening holiday if you're going to eat after sunset or three stars coming out. So the rabbi says if the hot plate is going to go on, it's not on yet, and you put raw food on it, and it cooks it. The rabbi says that that's also a cause and effect that will allow you to be able to cook for the evening time. We'll stop here for today. I hope everyone has the greatest day. Keep up the beautiful work. God bless you all. Besorot Tovot, Yeshua V'Namot. Take care. Bye.